Devlin, Untamed. The platform.
Welcome to the podcast, people. iOS, It's Only Sport. Martin Devlin, Lachlan War. We do a live sports show on the platform, 1 till 4 every afternoon. You've got to download the app if you're not a listener already. The Platform NZ. Platform Plus is where you go if you want to subscribe, and $3 a week keeps us all in gainful employment, plus you get a heck of a lot of other benefits. iOS, the name of the show, It's Only Sport. And in this podcast, very special guest today, John Mitchell, the former All Black coach, who is now the England women's rugby coach. We talked about the state of the game, investment in it, competition, performance, and we hear so much, don't we, about how well-resourced the women's game is up that part of the world, how much better off they are than our female players. Well, is that actual fact, or is that just a mainstream media beat up? Mitch, in his own words. Finally, add some truth to this discussion. It's an interview well worth listening to. And if you want to hear the whole thing, well, Platform Plus means you can go back and you can listen to all of the interviews that we do every day in full. The ATM podcast, episode 67 with Mark Watson. Many topics to talk about, as always, with Watto. The cricket commentary, which raised some last week, did it not? After the comments by Ian Smith, Brendan Telfer all over that as well. Watto's thoughts on that. The subterfuge that is around women's sport, and especially the reporting of. Now, I'm not having a go at anyone here, but I do wonder why Amelia Kerr and Sophie Devine aren't subject to the same kind of sports reporting that Trent Boult is. What I'm getting at is choosing these T20 competitions over playing for the New Zealand side, which is our representative side, plus also the domestic competitions in this country. Now, Sophie Devine, I think, has played every single T20 competition all over the world in the last 12 months, but picks and chooses when to play here in New Zealand. Is that the future? And is that okay? And why won't anyone have this discussion? If women athletes demand to be treated the same as the men, that means we discuss, we debate, we analyse, theorise and criticise exactly the same as the men, because otherwise it's patronising, right? It's all up for discussion. As well as that, the sheer influence that sport can have, not just on a country, but in the world, the positive influence that sport can have. Philasande Sixaba is a SuperSport South African, normally a rugby host. But I was watching some of his Twitter posts after Du Plessis won the MMA, UFC, middleweight title on the weekend. And that man is doing what the Bokke did to that country. People are just in love with South African sports people when they succeed. And he can explain in his own words how uplifting that has been to his country. A little bit more on that as we start the show always the same way. Tablets in hand, I say, gather my flock. Sport is the answer. Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Sport matters. Sport makes a difference. It makes a real difference. Sport can affect change. It can cause change. But more importantly, sport unites. It breaks down barriers. It does what an infinity of meetings and protests and emails and minutes and hurry and consultants and government departments and councils and memos and rights and rewrites and all the best wishes that might only ever hope to do, sport has the power to actually do. The power to influence, awesome power, to engage, to make change. And this is demonstrated none better than in South Africa, a country with the deepest of deep-set divisions, a country where the most blatant racism of apartheid was law up until the early 1990s, where Nelson Mandela, the most beloved of national heroes, caused such a major outcry by appearing at the 1995 Rugby World Cup final wearing Francois Pienaar's number 7 on his back. The then hated symbolism of the Springbok jersey, hated in the black communities. It was a symbol of everything that they despised about apartheid. Contrast that, though, with now. Those times of just 3 decades ago with what is going on nowadays, the power of that same jersey to unite the nation, the outpouring of support and celebration and togetherness brought about by the Boks winning the World Cup. The scenes and gatherings of hundreds of thousands of people were simply undeniable. And now we're seeing a similar outcry over Dricus Du Plessis wowing the nation with the first ever UFC/MMA title he won on Sunday night. The country has gone gaga, bing bong, just plain loopy over his win. a coming together of South Africans from all spheres and sections of their society, and nothing else can do that or will ever do that the way that sport does. They've got power cuts, rolling power cuts, terrible crime, economic collapse, not to mention the ongoing generational scars that still exist because of apartheid. Sport seems to be the answer. Sport can do what nothing else can. So celebrate sport and the power that it has. And the best, most recent example of anywhere in the world, the power of sport to influence, to affect change, to bring people together in a way that they genuinely engage.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The platform.
Let us waste no time because John Mitchell awaits. The Red Roses coach, the former All Black coach. He's ever going to come back and coach here in New Zealand? Why the heck not? It has been over 20 years, 2 decades now, Lachlan, since he left New Zealand.
I had a bit of a hot take when we were getting our next coach after Sir Steve Hansen, that I thought, and I actually pitched this idea to the Herald as a story of sort of doing a power rankings of All Blacks coaches and a rating of how good they'd be in the job. And I had as a wild card John Mitchell, because there's no New Zealand coach in the world as more well-travelled rugby coach than John Mitchell.
Okay, before we get to the headlines, let me just roll past this. Ireland, Sale, England assistant coach, Chiefs, Waikato, London Wasps, no particular order here. The All Blacks, England women, the US, Japan as an assistant coach, the Bulls in South Africa. I mean, he has been absolutely everywhere coaching. Western Force is another one. Where hasn't he been coaching? The man has learned an awful lot since he was the All Black coach. He's grown up a lot since then as well. But just something to do with NZR and the fact that they haven't wanted to know him ever since. Of course, he's Daryl Mitchell's dad as well. Okay, and we're going to ask all about Daz as well, because Daryl Mitchell is just a superstar in New Zealand cricket at the moment. So John and Kay raised an absolute diamond there. Anyway, Mitch awaits, so let's rip it.
Yep, run through these nice and quick. I'll start off with some concerning news over the last couple of days involving the Warriors. Warriors fans, you can breathe a sigh of relief. Sean Johnson, star halfback, has been cleared of any serious injury following ankle concerns last week. Similar story with the Broncos and their captain Adam Reynolds, who's been cleared also of a serious injury. He limped off the training field yesterday. Rugby news, former Blues and Auckland prop James Lay has been named a Moana Pacifica captain for the 2024 Super Rugby Pacific campaign. More rugby news, Owen Farrell, he's departing English club rugby side Saracens at the end of this season and will be joining Racing 92 in France on a 3-year deal. Teen football Fern star Millie Clegg has continued her
Great piece of news this is.
Yeah, rapid rise, scoring a very good move to a top team in the United States. She's 18 years of age as Millie Clegg.
Should have been picked in the football Fern squad. Should have been.
She's been snapped up by Racing Louisville on a 3-year deal after she was scouted in the lead up to the FIFA Women's World Cup, that team over in the US. New Zealand's Amelia Kerr and Mark Chapman have been named in the International Cricket Council's T20 men's and women teams of 2023. More cricket news. Australian cricket all-rounder, should I say, Glenn Maxwell was being investigated by Cricket Australia after he ended up in an Adelaide hospital following a night out watching a cult band. Isn't that the second time in 6 months?
Well, no, remember,
like
he fell off a golf cart cavorting during the One Day Cricket World Cup. Only 2 ways you fall off a golf cart, people. You're drunk or you're drunk.
Yeah.
You got a problem?
Liverpool say that the leg injury to Mohamed Salah suffered at the Africa Cup of Nations is, quote, worse than first feared. Egypt, though, remain hopeful he can return for a potential semi-final. From what I've seen, Salah could be out for 3 to 4 weeks, I believe it is, with his hamstring injury. And some live sport today, mainly American stuff. I'll finish off with the tennis, but I'll start off with some NBA and NHL. On the basketball front, quite a few games on today. The ones of note, Dallas Mavericks up against the Boston Celtics. Phoenix Suns there, turning their form around this season. They're up against the Chicago Bulls. Sacramento Kings take on the Atlanta Hawks. Minnesota Timberwolves, the best team in the West at the moment by the numbers. They play the Charlotte Hornets. All of these getting underway in the next couple of hours. In the NHL, Boston Bruins, Winnipeg Jets, New Jersey Devils are in action. My LA Kings up against the San Jose Sharks, the Canucks and the Blackhawks as well. The Australian Open. Now, your good friend Cam Norrie.
Oh, what happened to the Camster? The Cam the wrist.
Took on Alexander Zverev in a 4-hour match last night. Went over 4 hours.
Oh, I tell you what, you'd be lucky to have that hand still attached.
Well,
to it
went to 5 sets. And the fifth set was the tie-break, because there were though won 10-3 in the tie-break, so he won that match 3-2. Carlos Alcaraz, I only saw bits of his match. He was sensational against his Serbian opponent, unseeded guy. Daniil Medvedev winning yesterday as well. In terms of today, Novak Djokovic up against Taylor Fritz. Taylor Fritz is also your new friend because of his influencer girlfriend who ate Vegemite. And that's apparently a news story in New Zealand.
Stop this, mate.
Go to the News Hub website. Look at one of their leading stories.
Why is that girl on the front page of the News Hub website? Take one look at the photo and then the answer is very obvious.
Yannick Sinner plays as well. He takes on Andrei Rublev in the women's singles draw. Barbara Krejcikova.
This is an organisation which will scream that at you if you dare criticise anyone who wears a skirt and plays sport, and yet they put pretty girls on their website for one reason. Clickbait.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Arena Sabalenka defeating Australian Open Women's Singles Champion. She's playing today at 9 p.m. Coco Gauff in action at 3 o'clock. In terms of the winners yesterday, Victoria Azarenka knocked out. Alanis Svitolina knocked out. And the Italian Jasmine Paolini knocked out as well. A lot of the seeded players getting knocked out in the women's singles draw. That's what's making news, Martin.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The platform.
John Mitchell, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch, the journey. Remember Mitch when he was All Black coach? And it all came crashing down at the 2003 Rugby World Cup. Well, John hasn't been in this country since. He has coached all around the world. I mean, you know, when you look at the man's resume, where hasn't he been? Ireland, Sale in England, England assistant coach, Japanese assistant coach, London Wasps, and then no particular order, Waikato, the Chiefs, the Bulls in South Africa. And now the Red Roses, the English women's rugby team. Why did he take on that job? Plus also the investment, the resources. You know, we always get constantly told, don't we, of how much better off they are in that part of the world. Just what is the state of the women's game there? And, of course, the Black Ferns are going to be playing at Twickenham against England later in the year, looking for the biggest ever crowd to attend a women's rugby test. So, Mitch, in his own words, you know, you were assistant coach with Eddie with England, obviously, in 2019 at the World Cup, and then, you know, with Japan and with Jamie at the World Cup in Paris last year. So at both of those tournaments, I mean, did you think after those experiences that, heck, you would like to have another crack at another men's Rugby World Cup as well?
Yeah, I don't say that's still not in the locker. But yeah, no. For me, it was like, like I sort of inquired actually about I knew that they were looking for a head coach for the Red Roses, and so I just inquired to see what type of person they're actually looking for and whether they would be interested. So I had a coffee and. It wasn't one of those sort of things where they ring you up and say like, would you do the job? I actually decided to go through the whole process, and by going through the whole process, I actually sort of got a real feel for for what they're about and where they wanted to go to next. Which then probably the more I put my head into it, I thought, geez, this is some program, and it's actually something that really excites me. So. I'm actually grateful that I actually even took the time out to even ask about the position in the first place.
Mitch, we're really paranoid in this country about the resources that women's rugby has up your part of the world where you're living at the moment, especially France and England. I don't know how much you know about, you know, the amount of money, the amount of investment, or where it sits in New Zealand at the moment. But just explain to us exactly, you know, what it is like up there. Like what do you have available to you?
Well, see, like in England, there's a strong domestic competition. There's probably strong 5 teams, and there's 3 odd teams that kind of like battle it out against each other, and unfortunately, you always have a team at the bottom of the log. But yeah, they're growing. So there's obviously foreign players in that competition as well. Obviously home nation players as well, so it's a very strong competition. So there's a fair bit of depth to select from, and then the main contract really is the 30 Red Roses contracts, and then we offer like around 5 or 6 sort of transitional contracts to younger girls that we think that we put investment into them and give them a little bit more money, they can obviously transition into professional rugby, or find an extra day or two to be professional. So you still really got a mixture of amateur, some that have been playing the game a long time, and then you've got the ones that are truly professional. So there's a huge contrast between of where the players are at. But those 30 Red Roses contracts are sort of like gold to the girls, and they're reviewed annually. So a bit like the Black Caps system. So yeah, they've got to obviously perform and to sustain their contracts, which is at this moment in time probably their advantage.
John Mitchell is with
advantages.
us. Yeah, former All Black coach, of course, people, and now coach of the England women's rugby team. And it sounds very similar here to New Zealand. It still sounds developmental, like it's not fully professional. And I suppose that's why I asked that previous question. We've got this paranoia that the English women and the French women are absolutely fully professional with all these substructures in place as well. But it doesn't sound as though it's actually reached that level yet.
Well, when you do the road trips and get around to meet the staff and the players, and like you talk to the contracted players about their how they're going in terms of their individual development plans and all those sorts of things. So you carried all that stuff up there, but they're still starting at 5 p.m. or waiting for the last teammates to come in around 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. at night. So, it's in progress. It probably actually reminds me very much of when rugby turned professional here in '95 when I was with Sale way back. It was about 4 or 5 of us that were professional, and we used to have to wait till 5 o'clock before
everyone
all
had
the
their
other lads
jobs
would have to come in from work.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually very similar to that right now. So it's going to evolve, no doubt about that, but it's certainly still in its infancy.
What kind of support, crowd support, television ratings, do you know that the game gets on the women's side of it up there?
It is on TNT Sport up there, one sort of live game per day on the weekend. I think, obviously that will need to grow because the previous live streaming, I think, showed more. We'll obviously have to, I'm not sure what the audience figures are on that, but that sort of seems to be just on top of the men's sort of production. And then that's probably about it, really. I think BBC didn't present our warm-up test matches last year, but however it did present the World 15 tournament. So yeah, still a bit of work to do there, but that's what we've got to earn as well. Last year at Twickenham, the last match against France, I think it was around 58,000, 60,000 people.
Crowd,
so so we've still got a lot of work to do to increase our audience, I guess, our supporters, and fill the green seats of Twickenham.
I've got a list here for you. Correct me if I'm wrong in any part of this. Ireland, Sale, England, the assistant coach, London Wasps, Chiefs, in no particular order, Waikato, the All Blacks, Western Force, the women, of course, Japan, United States, the Bulls in South Africa. It's just such a resume you've got now, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm almost 60, mate. So I guess it's always gonna clock up. I've been very grateful for the worldly experiences that I've had, and some of those experiences, or all those experiences, have actually been fantastic in many ways. I think the worldly experiences allowed me to, I guess, not be so biased in just one way of playing rugby. I think in many ways it's actually helped me grow as a coach, and it's allowed me to, I guess, evolve and ultimately serve people based on their needs and their personalities. So I'm very lucky. Yeah.
We've got Ian Foster now, who's he'll pop up somewhere, we're absolutely sure of it. Jamie Joseph is coming back to New Zealand. The question's always going to be asked to you as well. Is that ever an intention? Would you ever like to? Would you ever want to again? Because it's been a heck of a long time.
Yeah, been a long time. I think 21 odd years since I've lived in New Zealand. It's still home. It's still, like a place that you're proud of, but also, like I've built a lot of friendships up here as well, and you never say never. Come back and live at home. Will I work back at home? I think it's probably a long shot, ever, to be fair. Hopefully health is good to me over the next 10 years. I really don't know where I'm gonna end up. But I've certainly got choices. I've got obviously New Zealand, South Africa, and England, haven't I? So it's for me, it's we're really enjoying England. We love it. Just don't know. But I've also got grandchildren as well. That I would like to spend time with. So there's lots of decisions, but right at the minute it's not really too pressing because all my children are all around the world for different reasons. So there'll be plenty of time, I think, to connect.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. It's Tight 5 time.
The Tight 5.
5 separate sporting topics, roughly a minute or so on each one of those. And when the bell goes, we move quickly on to the next one. This isn't a topic, but I've got to say it. Newstalk ZB are promoting, like it's an exclusive, an interview with Grant Dalton saying that, yes, the America's Cup could come back to Auckland. Can we please recycle the quote from last Monday, which is now 9 days ago? Last Tuesday, 8 days ago, like a week ago today, where we interviewed Grant, and he said that. And at the time I said, if this was anything other than the platform or any other broadcaster than myself, then the mainstream media would be running this same story. So it's not an exclusive, and you're a week late. Yes or no, any chance it could ever come back here? We host it again?
Absolutely. I mean, as I said when we went, sometimes you've got to burn the village to save the village. And I don't think we realised how bad it was going to get when we made that, reaching decision to take the cup away in the first place. We're based here. It's called Team New Zealand. So if the situation is correct, you got a bloody well defend it, absolutely can come back here. But it's got to be correct because you'll lose it. And then it might take a couple of iterations before the situation financially is correct to come back here. But we want to take a bit of team, New Zealand with us to Spain as well.
Other topics we're going to talk about today. The Bills losing yesterday. I'm going to play you the two calls, the American call, the Korean call. Brilliant call again from the Koreans. Do you blame the kicker? That would be a bit like blaming Geordie Barrett for the All Blacks losing the World Cup final. John Mitchell, what did you learn about that? Owen Farrell has signed for Russin 92, which means he will never play for England again unless they change their rules. Their rules are very much like ours, Lachlan. If you're playing offshore, you can't represent the English rugby team. So, what's going to happen? Will they change the rules for that guy? Jason Kelsey with his shirt off, Tay-Tay in the corporate box, and the obligatory camera shots now every time the Kansas City Chiefs play of Taylor Swift in the crowd. We are all getting really sick of it. Glenn Maxwell, is it Australian cricket's problem to deal with the problem he obviously has with alcohol? Because these incidents are coming thick and fast these days. Let us kick it off, though, with the Buffalo Bills. Yesterday, the kicker. His name, Tyler Bass, and he missed a 44-yard field goal, which only would have drawn the scoreline. Do you blame the kicker?
Yes and no. I blame the whole team. I blame the defence. I blame Stephon Diggs.
Dropping a sitter.
Yep.
Defence was non-existent for the first three quarters.
there was some strange play
Josh
calls.
Allen missing an absolute sitter of a touchdown just before that field goal.
Yeah, he underthrew a ball that typically
He should have, mate. That's his job.
He has on a
That's
rope.
That's his job, yeah.
And there was some strange calls by the coach, Sean McDermott. They went for it twice on 4th down. The first time they got bailed out when the Chiefs lost the ball.
That's right, the
second
fumble.
time they made it. Look, I hate blaming one guy because there's so many instances during a game that can put you in a better position to win. And the Bills' offense was rolling, and the Chiefs their defense started to get stops in the 3rd and 4th quarter. The Bills' defense couldn't get any stops, so the defense really needed to step up. In saying that, in the NFL, unlike rugby and rugby league, the kicker has one job.
One job, pal.
Kick the ball
goal.
through
That's it.
the
Yep,
post.
yeah. And look, and you practice it, you get out there before the
Yep.
game. This is a home game. You know the wind. And he admits afterwards that he didn't adjust for the wind. Guys get sacked for that. It's as simple as that. I believe that, look, it's not Richie Mwanga's fault and Geordie Barrett's fault that we didn't win the Rugby World Cup final. It comes down quite often in these matches to kicks because that's the last act of the game, right? But your job is to kick those goals. And Mwanga, if you remember, missed 5 or 6 against Argentina in the semi-final.
Yeah, he missed a few conversions.
You know, your job is to be... How many did Andre Pollard get in the Rugby World Cup final?
He got 4.
How many kicks did he take?
I think 4. I can't remember.
He
but
got 4 out of 4.
Okay.
South Africa have won how many World Cups?
4.
How many of those have they won without scoring a try in the final?
3.
There you go. Why? Because they have a 100% goal kicker.
Well, when their points are on offer, they take them.
They take them
They've
and
always
they
had good
get
goal kickers.
them.
I mean, look, I think you're a little harsh on Mwanga and Barrett. Look, it's late in the game. They're not just coming off the bench to kick goals. They're playing the game. There's
but they
huge,
got
and they're
to
down.
get
And
those.
I know. There's a huge. They're down one man, so there's a massive level of stamina used up or attrition, or however you want to describe it. So especially Geordie Barrett. Look, that was a 54-metre kick. It was not far off the 50-metre line and
Yeah,
on an
against the
angle.
wind and rain, yeah.
And it was on target, and then it sort of went
Veered
left
off
at
to
the
the
end.
left, yeah.
So look, I'm a bit more defensive of those guys.
No, I
in
don't
terms-
either guy, but I'm just saying it's your bloody
yeah, no,
job.
in terms
though.
of the NFL, it's literally your job to
It
do
is.
that.
You've got to get it. And so, Tyler Bass, look, we're going to play for you a little later on in the program some of the audio from the post-match presser, just because I want you to hear from Josh Allen, the quarterback. It doesn't matter what sport it is. You don't even have to like the NFL, but you just want to hear this guy's voice. Man, it was riveting to watch. As he sat there, he hadn't even taken his pads or his jersey off. This is being fan-centric, and this is fan engagement. You know, after the Rugby World Cup final, those guys who missed those kicks didn't front for the All Blacks. After the Super Rugby final, Sam Cane didn't front the media, right? He was too upset or too pissed off or something. In America, you front. That's what the fans demand. It's all about the fans. That's what you're paid to do. In New Zealand Rugby, this is your first and biggest lesson. If you want to be fan-centric, put your players in front of the public. John Mitchell, is there a job for John Mitchell back in New Zealand Rugby at some stage? There's got to be, doesn't there?
Yeah, but it's got to be soon because he's not young.
He's almost 60.
Yeah, so he's just so experienced. He's travelled the world. You know, he coached the All Blacks.
Whatever mistakes he made were 2 decades ago, mate.
people
He's
forget,
a different guy now.
Apart from that World Cup semi-final, his record with the All Blacks was actually very, very good. But obviously it comes down to the World Cup, and that's what you're judged on. But it absolutely is. I like the idea of these really experienced coaches who are sort of are jumping around, and we see it a bit in the NFL and the NBA. I like the idea of them becoming, assistant coaches or associate head coaches. They're to sort of help out the man in charge. If he was to hypothetically come back to NZR and work alongside Razor and just help him with a few things, I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that. And what I'd love, actually, I'll say this. One thing I've thought that I'd love to see the NZR do with the All Blacks is obviously in consultation with the head coach forms his team around him. I'd love, it's easier said than done. I'd love it if NZR said, great, you have 2 or 3 and we'll find you a 4th with your consultation. Like, we're not going to just get some random just to, who you're not going to get along with. But someone maybe from the outside, someone that they get to pick that can actually help bounce ideas off of Racer, for example. Because if you've got your own team, I don't know, you're getting a bunch of guys you get along with, right? Are you getting guys who challenge you and who might not like what you say?
I see what you mean. Yeah, good idea. Good call, actually. I think the guy has got a brilliant rugby brain, and New Zealand deserves to have it again at some stage. Yeah. Jason Kelsey in the corporate box yesterday, Kansas City Chiefs versus the Bills again. And this doesn't matter if you like your NFL or not. It's just more about the story. Jason Kelsey with his shirt off, hilarious.
Right. Yeah.
This guy's a big woolly bear of a man. I think it actually shaved half his chest hair off. But the obligatory Taylor Swift shot. Now, I was watching SportsCentre last night. A guy called John Anderson, who's been presenting on SportsCentre for years, great presenter. He made a side comment when the highlights were on. There was a touchdown, and then he said, as he was commentating the highlights, he said the obligatory shot of Taylor Swift. Now, a guy called Al Michaels, one of the foremost callers in the NFL, got taken off the playoffs this year because he made a comment saying the sideshow should not become the show. And I hope that John Anderson doesn't get in trouble here, but I fear that he will. Enough is enough. Look, I think whoever the television director is has got to stop this. It was funny to start with. It was interesting maybe one day. But now it's got to the stage where it is boring. She doesn't play. Everyone's got a girlfriend, a partner, a mother, whoever is watching. And most of these players have got a hot partner attached. She's a singing superstar, great. But the guy Josh Allen's got a singing superstar girlfriend. Why has this now become part of the narrative every game? This is why I'm hoping Kansas City lose. I want this to stop now because as a viewer, I'm over it. I'm just over. I'm. At first it was a bit of a novelty. The novelty's worn off. For me, it has anyway.
Yeah,
I'm over it.
It was fun the first couple of games because it was worlds colliding with Taylor Swift being at an NFL game, and you made a great point when it started that the NFL are doing a really good thing here where they're actually tapping into an audience they've never attracted to. The more it's gone on and the more they've milked it. I mean, don't even go near ESPN or Sports Center socials because every post is about Taylor Swift or it's about Travis Kelce and it's got his face photoshopped onto her album covers and what. It's just infuriating. And it's not because we as fans hate Taylor Swift.
No. I don't care about Taylor Swift. She's not part of my life.
But that's it. It's like, can we just focus on the game?
On the game.
Every time there's a celebrity at a game, if bloody Oprah or Meghan Markle turns up, are you going to put a camera on them?
If Obama is there, do we get Obama cam every time he turns up?
Because
no, we don't.
I mean, it'll be nice for the first couple of minutes of a game, but after a while, you don't because you don't need to do it. And the thing is, it turns off your fan base. It annoys your fan base.
Totally agree. Finally, is it up to Australian cricket to step in now and help Glenn Maxwell? Glenn Maxwell, seriously, has a serious problem. It's obvious to everyone. I have had a couple of text messages from people, I won't say who they are, who know this guy well in Australia. He's now in hospital after attending a concert with some other Australian cricketers. It always seems to involve alcohol. He, in inverted commas, fell off a golf cart last year during the One Day World Cup, which you only do if you're absolutely legless, or you only do if you're absolutely legless. And that was laughed off at the time because a bit of a joke, few lads having fun, and he didn't get injured enough to prevent him playing. Now he's in hospital. How long does this go on before somebody steps in and goes, dude, there's obviously something going on here in your life, and you end up getting so slathered that you are starting to hurt yourself? Is that Australian cricket's problem? I'm not judging one way or other. If the guy wants to be an alcoholic, destroy his life with alcohol, I don't know whether he is or not. I don't care. But what I'm asking is it now Australian cricket's problem? Because he still represents Australian cricket.
Yeah, I mean, assuming it's true that this latest incident involves him getting legless and not being able to control himself, then it does, because it's a bit like if there was an All Black who was, I don't know, Zach Gilford or Jimmy Cowan. He had obviously some alcohol problems. That it gets to a point where it's so publicised, it brings the governing body, the sporting body, into disrepute. Because when you start representing a national team, it's you don't from there start only promoting your own brand. You're promoting two brands, yourself and the team you're playing for. Especially the national strip, that when you wear it, you're representing the country. And so from that moment on, you're always attached to your country's name, Australian cricketer, Australian all-rounder.
Byron Callagher
from All Black, which we talked about a lot last week. That it is the duty of your employer, in a sense, particularly when you're so embedded in the public sphere, that, it is your job to step in and do something. And I think they would.
Well, it's gone beyond the joke now. The funny aspect's gone, hasn't it?
It's happened twice.
Now that the guy's in hospital. It's happened a lot more than twice. These two are very well publicised in the last few months.
And I would say that, Cricket Australia, I'd like to think behind the scenes having conversations with them now. Well, then they're investigating it. And then there'll be conversations about it.
The power of sport. We began this podcast with a sermon from the mountaintop, just outlining, we celebrate sport. That's what we do on this program. We love sport so much, and what sport can do. You can't have sport without the emotional attachment, and whether that's your own team or your favourite player or whatever, what it can do to you, it can uplift you, it can just send you down to the depths of misery and despair, can't it? But when a sports person or a team wins a world title and does what it does to a country like South Africa, after the Bokke won the Rugby World Cup and now Du Plessis with his UFC title, it is just incredible. The pictures tell the story. Philasande, Sixaba from SuperSport will spell the rest. I've been following your Twitter. I've been following the news in South Africa. This is a big, big story, isn't it?
It's massive, Martin. I mean, when you think about it, he's the first South African to hold a UFC title. It's massive. I think South Africans love to make history, whatever sporting code there is. And I think for Dricus to go all the way in Canada and bring back the title was a special moment for not only for him but for the entire country. It's actually mental what sport does for South Africans and how they really enjoy and rally behind whatever sporting code, whatever individual, whatever team goes out and tries to make some history and make some glory for South Africa. So it's huge. And there were so many watch parties that I saw as early as 4 a.m. People were gathering in Pretoria, all across the country to watch that fight. And it was a special moment for South Africa and for Dricus.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. That, is it too presumptive to say that sport seems to be the one thing that really unites your country at the moment? We saw the extraordinary pictures after winning both of the last World Cups, but the last one particularly. And now this, and it doesn't matter what colour your skin is, what nationality you are, that sport seems to be able to break down those barriers. Am I reading too much into this or not?
No, absolutely, Martin. I think, you would have, both of us are big rugby fans, and we would have seen most of the Springbok players speak about, it's the one thing that really unites everyone in South Africa. And they aren't wrong, It's one thing that South Africans really band over, they bond over. They forget about their worries over, and that's sport. And it's got this tremendous power that it has that breaks down so many barriers in South Africa. There's a lot of ills in South Africa that go wrong, but I think it's one thing that South Africans don't even question when it comes to sport. Whether sporting code it is, whatever individual that represents South Africa in a sport, they rally behind that. And I think it's one of the blessings that this country has in terms of, unity and achieving that is through sport. And it's amazing to see some of the pictures that have come from this weekend, let alone what came out from the Springboks win last year. So it's just beautiful to see, always beautiful to see that.
Look, I saw, Rassie Rasmus posted a real big tribute to it. I couldn't understand it because it was all in Afrikaans, but I'm sure that Dricus could actually, translate that. And look, and he was just one of many.
He was one of many. The sports minister was also in congratulatory mood for Dricus. There's so many people that rallied behind Dricus. It's special, I think mixed martial arts in South Africa is not even the biggest sport. It's quite an elite sport. It's quite a secluded and a very small sport in terms of its popularity and the number of people that actually follow the sport. But people don't even have to understand what's going on in the sport. They know that it's a South African on a world stage that's representing the country, and they rally behind that. And I think that's the unique thing about South Africa, is that whatever circumstance, whatever the individual, whatever the team, the country rallies behind that person and really gets behind them and gives them that support and that moral support and that extra sort of motivation to go out there and achieve history. Rassie was basically saying that he was very proud of Dricus and what he's been able to do and been able to achieve. It's all in Afrikaans, but I also understand a little bit of it, so I try to make out what was being said there. But it's just amazing to see the support that Dricus du Plessis achieved and enjoyed this past weekend.
Philasande Sixaba, who's from SuperSport, and we talk to you normally about rugby, and he provided some fantastic thoughts and just general chat during the Rugby World Cup, and we hope to catch up all this year. Of course, we've got the South African team here. Well, we're calling it a D team, the cricket team that's arrived here for a couple of tests. But the Kiwi connection is that Dricus has already called out our man, Israel Adesanya, and wants to fight him and that, to be the true African champion. So I know there's a lot of verbiage and a lot of words go back and forth between these guys, and a lot of it is theatre as well. But I think that here, especially now, we've got another, New Zealand versus South Africa, All Black versus Boca thing happening.
Yeah. I think it might be a special fight, and a lot of people want it to happen, and a lot of people are wanting it to happen on the African continent, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in South Africa, and I feel like it's something that should happen, and that's going to happen. I heard Dana White was saying that they really are considering an MMA event in South Africa, in Africa this year. So hopefully we can see an Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis fight somewhere on the continent. It's going to be huge. And Dricus's win this past weekend has just done so much for the popularity of the sport in South Africa over the next sort of 48 hours since he's won the title. So it's going to do wonders, and hopefully again, for the first time of asking, can defend that middleweight title. So it's special. These rivalries are always special, whether it's individuals, whether it's teams, and it wouldn't be any less when Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis meet in the octagon. So really hoping that happens, and really hoping that it happens in South Africa.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. We've got time to play another rendition of your favourite game, which is called...
What is more chance of happening?
Bring it, Lachlan, with a lot more.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, I'd like to up it again.
What is more chance of happening?
Well, I present two scenarios and you tell me scenario A or scenario B. What is more chance of happening? Now, both of these things have to happen before I present the second scenario. Both Novak and Coco win at the Aussie Open. So Novak wins the men's, Coco wins the women's. Or Lydia Ko, riding this wave of form, goes on to win a major this year, because it's been almost a decade, I think, since she's won a major.
2015 was her last one, I think.
There you go.
Might have been 2016. I'd say there's more chance that Novak and Coco win the Grand Slams.
Why?
Well, you sort of answered it right there, that Lydia Ko hasn't won a major in nearly 10 years. And like Rory McIlroy, there's reasons around that.
Yeah.
And I would think that it's kind of hard to overcome those reasons. And fair play to Lydia Ko. I think she won her first tournament in a number of years in 2021. And then 2022, she won quite a few. I think she was number one in the world. But she still can't win a major, it seems.
I just think that there are other things going on in her life. Lifestyle choices made. She's married now and everything else. She's won $20-something million. I just kind of
start to just chill out of it.
Yeah,
you won majors. You were the best player in the world for a period of time. There, people remember you.
Yes.
You're a name in women's golf.
She always said that she would give it up by the time she's 30. She wanted to study psychiatrist. I mean, she always said that she would pull out by that time anyway. I just don't know whether or not golf is everything in her life as it once was. Yes! What is more chance of happening then? It's a Coco Novak benefit at the Aussie Open. Or, and this is your theory, first game of the year for the Warriors, Roger starts at fullback.
Well, he won't start at fullback. Andrew Webster's pretty much already said he's going to play Chance Nickel-Klugstad at fullback, I think. So there's more chance that Novak and Coco Gauff win. But I do think that they should start Roger at fullback. This is how I look at it. Okay. So there's about 5 positions, at least in my opinion, in rugby league, that are real proper game-breaking positions, maybe 6. Your spine, so your 9, your 6, your 7, your 1, and then a prop forward, and then I'd say probably your centres, because often they get a lot more space to work with than, say, a winger.
I'd add a 13 to that, but yeah.
Yeah, 13 as well. Yep, 13 as well. Yep. But those positions for me are both very key to a premiership side / the potential to be game-breaking positions more so than the others. Now, there's about 6 or 7 listed there, and those are quite a few positions, but still. Anyway, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, and this is no disrespect at all to Chance Nickel-Klugstad. I'm a big fan of Chance, love him. I think he is a much more expansive player on attack. He has the ability to attack a back line that's defending him, or a defensive line that's defending him, much better with his skill set than Chance. We've seen that over the years playing rugby league, and I think that is better utilised at fullback than centre. Chance played quite a bit of centre for the Raiders in his last year there, and was a good centre. Wasn't bad. He wasn't spectacular in the senses of being a Dally M Centre of the Year, but he was good. And I think it's a safer bet to probably do that. I could understand it not being safer, considering Roger's been out of league for 2 years now, and he's an older man, and maybe he doesn't have the same game.
That footwork that he's got and the ability to create a gap, make a gap, isn't that perfectly placed in the centres? And no criticism of Rocco Berry, but the Warriors don't have game-breaking centres. They don't. They've got very solid guys, consistent guys, but the ability to actually find a gap, break a gap, make a break. I think Roger's got much more to his game than those that are currently there in those positions.
Yes, I'd agree with that. And saying that, I'll just go back to it, that I think that with the space you get as a fullback when you're returning the ball back, and particularly when you join the back line on attack later on of the sets and close to the goal line, there's more room compared to a centre there to essentially attack the defence. That's what I think.
What is more chance of happening then? Coco goes back-to-back, and that would be winning the US and the Australian Open. Novak does exactly the same because he won the US last year, wins the Australian Open. Both of these two are the Aussie Open champs, and we'll find that out on Sunday night. Or Dricus du Plessis fights anyone other than Israel Adesanya next in the UFC.
No, there's more chance that Novak Djokovic and Coco Gauff win their singles.
I don't think there's any chance that he fights anyone other than Israel. There's no point him fighting anyone else. He's the champion. You got to fight the guy now that is the biggest money spinner, don't you?
Yeah.
And unless something happens and Israel gets injured. I mean, that's the only caveat that I'd put on that. If Israel wants to fight, that's his fight.
Yeah, and you've got three real contenders in that middleweight division now. And if Israel Adesanya's to knock off du Plessis, then all of a sudden you've got, Strickland beat Adesanya, but then he beat du Plessis. Du Plessis beat Strickland, so you've got three guys that are on sort of almost a level playing field.
And if you remember up about a year ago, before Pereira, I think, went up the division or dropped the division or whatever, that Israel had run out of opponents. And that was part of the problem with the division, that he was just killing everyone.
He was fighting guys again that he'd already beaten and defended his title successfully against.
Yeah, it's coming. It's going to be a massive fight. Is it going to be in Africa?
That would be really cool if it was.
Well,
that would be spectacular.
They have taken the biggest fights in the world there before, the Rumble in the Jungle. Don't forget that.
Yes!
What is more chance of happening? Novak and Coco close out the Australian Open, which is what we expect. And I keep asking this question. The Breakers make the playoffs. They've only got to finish top six. They're seventh at the moment.
More chance of Breakers make the playoffs.
Than those two winning?
Yep.
You think?
Yep, I think so.
Well, you were saying before it was a laydown that they win.
No, I didn't say it was a laydown. I said there's more chance that happened to the other scenarios you presented to me. I think that just from what I've seen, Alcaraz looks seriously, seriously good. And I watched him last night and was just in awe. I mean, I've watched him before, but I was just reminded of how he just covers the court so well.
He's a young man,
I know. The pace, the ability to get back, but then perfectly play a shot so that it's in. And he smartly as well, where he'll put balls up to give himself some time and whatnot. He's just brilliant. Novak's been good he's gotten better, actually, I think, as the rounds have gone on, because the first couple of matches he had were going to 4 or 5 sets. So I give Alcaraz a huge shot. I've always been a Medvedev fan, especially on hard court. And Sabalenka's the defending champion. She's still there.
Yeah, okay. All
so
right.
I think...
Yes!
What is more chance of happening, though? Novak and Coco take out the Aussie men's, women's titles, respectively, at the Aussie Open. Or Liverpool don't choke and win the EPL.
Well, okay. Now, can I just put an asterisk next to this? Liverpool right now are missing...
Doesn't matter, mate.
8 first teamers.
Look, so are Man City.
No, they're not.
They've got such an injury. They've only just got De Bruyne back.
They just got De Bruyne back. Haaland's either back or coming back.
Corruption charges.
Man City should win this title.
They should win every game they play in England 6-0.
Yeah, they should. Assuming they win their game in hand, they're only 2 points off us. And all we need to do is draw a game and they're ahead of us. And they get goals difference goes their way. So it wouldn't be a choke job if Liverpool didn't win it. It
will be a choke job.
No, it won't.
You're going to do an Arsenal.
No, not that
last year.
I think there's more chance that Liverpool don't choke, though.
Next!
I'll say that.
Final question
Full
then.
faith.
Same question. Coco and Novak win, or Denver go back-to-back in the NBA and do it for the first time since who? When's the last time that any team has done that?
It was Golden State. 17-18.
There you go. ATM, the Mark Watson podcast, episode 67. Foremost commentator that Watto is. He's a great talkback host. He's commentated at 4 Olympic Games. Sport all around the world. There's nothing that he can't sit in front of with a microphone and call. He's brilliant at that. Plus, he's always full of opinions, which is why we love him, particularly on this program. No sacred cows with Watto. Interview with John Mitchell to start the show today. Mitch debunking a lot of myths that are mainstream media fed here about women's rugby. And we've got this whole idea that up the north, they've got unlimited resources, unlimited playing strength, that the competitions are watched by tens of thousands of people, that they're all over the television. No. He has just clearly spelt it out for us. He said it is a bit like when men went professional in 1995 and 96. He said it took a long time for it to actually grow some roots. He says they've got 30 contracted players, Mark. They've got a handful of other contracts. But he said essentially when it comes to team training at 5, he waits till 6 because most of the women have jobs and they turn up after that and they arrive after their actual day job. He said it's not a case of just throwing money at it and that works. And he said that most of the games aren't live on TV. Some of them are streamed. He said, but we're battling the whole time. We are building it. Well, wouldn't it be nice if New Zealand Rugby accepted that instead of trying to ram it down our throats that this thing is up there with, the Australian Open tennis and Super Bowl?
Yeah, look, I agree. I've always used the word, and you've heard me say it, just let it organically grow. But, like I say, there's a strong women's agenda, political agenda that runs through our media, and they're just so desperate for this to have a point of view on par with the men's. And the reality is it's not there, but everybody's too scared to say it. I think all rugby players have the ability to have jobs. I did one of the toughest sports on the planet in the Ironman, where you've got 3 disciplines and you're training 35, 40 hours a week. I still managed to work part-time as a lifeguard at the Auckland Tepid Baths and do some swim coaching. And, this sort of nonsense that you need to be full-time to achieve in rugby and therefore you need to get paid it's just an absolute myth, and someone needs to sort of shut that down. But it's not going to pay for itself. I don't think it'll ever pay for itself, to be perfectly honest. But in saying that, I think domestic rugby in this country is heading down that path too, where it's going to struggle to pay for itself as well outside of the All Blacks.
I don't think it probably does in this country anymore. And you've got NPC teams now that are moving to local council grounds because crowds aren't turning up. Just on the same theme here, and I'm not picking on these two women who are our two greatest cricketers at the moment, and that's Sophie Devine and Amelia Kerr. But again, where are the stories a la Trent Boult? Trent Boult, of course, decided that he'd rather play these silly T20 franchise tournaments and T10s and 100s and 7-a-side cricket or whatever it is in the United States than playing for the Black Caps, pick and choose his time. Well, we've got 2 of our leading women who are doing exactly the same, yet not one single word is ever said about this as far as the mainstream media are concerned. And I understand that this is the way it is these days, but for Amelia Kerr and for Sophie Devine, who decide that they don't want to play the Super Smash, that they'd rather play the richer competitions, that they'll pick and choose when they play for New Zealand, I don't see... Look, if you want to be called professional, then you're going to have to be treated like a professional, which is what the whole point of it is. Why don't we analyse, theorise, criticise the same? Because this is a legitimate story.
Because every male journalist is terrified of being labelled a misogynist, terribly labelled of being a sexist, and the women journalists don't want to do it because they've got their political agenda. Look, look, Devine, and go and do what they want. I don't care because I don't watch it. I don't think anybody watches it. I don't think any male I know watches women's cricket, to be perfectly bloody blunt. And that's just the honesty of it. I've got a colleague that I do a bit of work with on another radio station, a cricket. Somebody of huge respect who knows their cricket really well, and he'd been watching a lot of the women's domestic game and said some of the fielding and some of the catching is dreadful, but at not one point do the cricket commentators critique it. At not one point do they actually say that is just awful cricket, that's a catch that should have been taken. So they want to be treated as professionals. They want parity with the men, but they want to cherry pick what parts of it, and that frustrates the hell out of me. We're not picking them apart personally and saying, they're terrible people, they're terrible daughters, they're terrible mothers, they're terrible whatever. Just purely in a sporting sense. We do it for the men, we should be able to do it for the women, and we should be able to do it with freedom without certain journalists in this country trying to then end our careers and labelling us with unfair terminologies. You're right, Martin. There's no parity at all. They want equity, but there's no equity. There's no equity, mate. And
I think it's patronising, and I keep using that word because, but I think it's patronised because I think that most of these women would rather that they were actually put on the same level, treated on the same level, and discussed on the same level. Speaking of the TV cricket commentators, Brendan Telfer on the show last week on the back of what Ian Smith had said, and Telfer broke it down in the way that he does. Now, you're talking about a guy with Brendan that's got 50 years experience in the business, and Ian Smith, who's got 30 years, and these guys have a right to have their opinions, and Brendan's opinion is, he said that he thinks the TVNZ commentators, the old Spark crowd, do a good job, but he says he wishes that the likes of Scott Stevenson would stop talking and let the actual game breathe. Now, Ian Smith made a comment about shithouse commentary or whatever. It's a bit of an off-the-cuff comment. When I got in touch with him, he said he just wants more oomph and more excitement put into the commentaries. Look, these two guys, I defend their right to say whatever it is about other people that do their job. I agree with some of it. I don't agree with all of it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I grew up with Brendan Telfer and Peter Williams and the likes of the Keith Quinns and those wonderful commentators. In fact, I remember when I got my break and I got to go to the Beijing Olympics. I was a kid in a candy store and I'd grown up, and John Macbeth and Peter Montgomery, and I went out for dinner in Beijing. Second night I was there, and I sat down. I had Peter Williams next to me, I had Brendan Telfer across from me, I had John Macbeth, Keith Quinn and Peter Montgomery, and I was just a kid in a candy store. These are the guys I grew up to listen to. These are the guys that had inspired me, and here I was sitting down having dinner with them at my first Olympics, and I've never forgotten it. And whatever people think of them, I've only ever had utter respect for them. But look, I think commentary is an interesting one, Martin. Look, I've done 4 Olympics, and I've done some of the pretty big events at the Olympics, and look, some people are going to love you and some people are going to hate you. It's very subjective. Of course,
that's it, absolutely.
But I do think, though, the standard of commentary in this country is pretty damn poor at the moment. I do. And I think a lot of it goes back to identity politics. A lot of it goes back to wanting this whole equity when it comes to having commentators. And I just don't think a lot of them are schooled enough.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
You better believe it!
The Platform.